Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. April 9th, 2018.
The Kuhner Report is powered by Kelly Financial Services, cleaning up your financial bull. Get the peace of mind that you deserve at Kelly Financial Services.
Is Trump getting ready now to launch a military assault on Syria? The president now has condemned what he calls the quote-unquote heinous, despicable attack, a chemical weapons attack that took place in the town of Douma, D-O-U-M-A. It is a suburb, a small town outside of Damascus, one of the few Muslim rebel strongholds left, a pocket of resistance in an otherwise a civil war, 7 years now, that Assad, backed by the dictator of Syria, Bashar Assad, backed by Vladimir Putin, Russia, Iran, Hezbollah, and Shiite militias, has for all intents and purposes now won. He controls over 90% of Syrian territory. The last big rebel stronghold that was in eastern Ghouta fell a couple of weeks ago. The Syrian army, backed by the Russians and the Iranians, are now engaging essentially now in mop-up operations. And over the weekend, the Muslim rebels claimed that in this town of Douma, a chemical weapons attack took place, which they say came from Assad's forces, from an attack helicopter. 42 civilians dead, many of them women and children, several hundred injured. Immediately, the images were broadcast on CNN, on the BBC, on MSNBC, on Fox News. They have now been dominating all news coverage wall to wall, and the pressure is now growing on the president to strike back at Assad and strike at him very hard. General Mattis now says he favors a strong military response. The Joint Chiefs now want a strong military response. The media is demanding a strong military response. The Republican establishment, leading Democrats, are now calling for Trump to go into Syria militarily and destroy Assad's air force, degrade his military capabilities, even if that means shooting down Russian planes and killing Russian soldiers. In other words, they are calling on the president to risk a possible war with Russia. And so my question to you is this. Number one, do you believe the chemical weapons attack was a genuine attack from Assad, or was it a false flag? Because I don't believe it was a genuine attack from Assad. I just don't. He's got everything to lose and nothing to gain by engaging in this kind of a chemical weapons attack. He risks losing everything right near the finish line when he is now on the cusp of a massive victory and routing all of his enemies. He would be an absolute lunatic to be doing this at this moment. We know that Saudi Arabia, led by their new crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, has been lobbying the United States, Trump in particular, but Congress, the military, to keep our 2,000 U.S. troops currently in Syria to stay there. This chemical weapons attack now gives them a pretext for them to stay there. We know that the generals overruled Trump, saying they wanted those 2,000 U.S. troops to stabilize Syria and help with the reconstruction of Syria, including toppling Assad. So our military never wanted our troops to leave. So if we were to engage in an attack on Syria, who would ultimately benefit? Turkey and Saudi Arabia, who have been backing the Islamic rebels. And notice how you have foreign powers who are always calling for us to get involved in local wars that benefits their side, but there's no vital interest to the United States. And if we do go hard against Assad, we would not just be up against that tin pot dictator, but we'd be up against the Russians, against the Iranians, against Hezbollah, and against Shiite militias. Do we need to get dragged in to another major war in the Middle East. $21 trillion in debt. Our own southern border wide open. 90 million Americans still out of the workforce. Our troops extended all over the world. 29,000 guarding the South Korean border. We still have 15,000 troops in Afghanistan. We have troops in Libya. We have troops in Yemen. We have troops in Syria. My friends, we're being bled dry to fight other nations' wars that benefit their interests, but where's the interest for the United States? And say what you want about Assad, for all of his flaws and all of his sins. He is a defender of the Christians. He is a defender of the Yazidis. He is the defender of religious minorities in Syria. And he is a staunch opponent of ISIS and radical Islam. So now that we have defeated ISIS, who do we care who runs Syria? As long as they're not against us. And yet the president now seems to be slowly being pushed into a war that he doesn't want. I know he doesn't want it because just last week he called for the troops to leave. And just conveniently, Shazam, just when he wants the troops to leave, just when Assad and Putin are weeks away from delivering the final knockout blow, with several pockets of resistance left, that's it. All of a sudden now, there is this chemical weapons attack. All of a sudden. The UN is condemning it. The international community is condemning it. The mainstream media is condemning it. Both parties up on Capitol Hill are condemning it. And now Trump is under tremendous pressure to lead an international coalition to essentially smash Assad. In other words, to do what the Muslim rebels were unable to do. We need this war, which could be another potential Vietnam, like we need a hole in the head. Mr. President, stay out of Syria. And so the Kelly Financial poll question of the day, whether you agree or disagree, should the United States bomb Syria? If you believe the answer is yes, it's time to teach Assad and Putin a lesson. You can vote on my Twitter page. If you believe the answer is no, B no. So A yes, B no. You can vote at the Kuhner Report on Twitter, Kuhner, or you can go to WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. Brittany, I know a lot of people have been voting now for at least an hour. What are the poll results thus far?
68% no, 32% yes.
Interesting. So Kuhner country's basically 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 no, 3 out of 10 yes. 70-30. All right, lines are loaded. Tony in Chicago. Tony, how are you, my friend? And welcome.
How you doing, Jeff?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good, but I'm not happy about this. Jerry stole some of my thunder, so I'm going to reiterate some of the things he said because it's very important. He's correct. At least the reports I've seen, it's the Genie Oil and Gas Corporation. That's spelled Genie. The Genie Oil and Gas Corporation is partnering with Saudi Arabia and Israel, and they want to run a pipeline through Syria. And this has New World Order written all over it, and I think it's time for the American people to finally realize that these wars are designed to enrich oil corporations, world banking institutions, the military-industrial complex, and foreign governments, and we need to stay out of it. This is so dangerous because this will not only get us involved, I think probably World War III, but it threatens our sovereignty. Because this is all part of the New World Order plan. They want to knock out Syria and they want to knock out Iran, and they want to use our men to fight and die to do it.
Tony, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what's different about Syria, even than, let's say, Iraq or Afghanistan, is you didn't have the Russians. I know they were helping Saddam, but you didn't have the Russians backing Saddam the way they've been backing Assad. You know, for the Russians, Syria is a vital national interest from their point of view. Iran, Syria is a vital national interest. So you now have major powers behind Assad that aren't going to walk away. So if we go in, they're going to be forced to respond. Am I wrong?
In my opinion, we should be. I don't have anything against Russia or Syria. We should. I mean, Putin is a nationalist. He's not a new world order. The real enemy here is the New World Order, the Rothschild banking cartel. And Jerry was right. The board of directors of the Genie Oil and Gas Corporation, Lord Jacob Rothschild, Dick Cheney, Rupert Murdoch, James Woolsey, and 4 other New World Order guys. So they're the real enemy.
So, Tony, you're basically saying stay out of Syria.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for that call, Tony. I like it. Glenn in South Shore. Go ahead, Glenn.
Jeff, thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure, Glenn.
Everything you said is spot on. I don't know if I can beat the last two guys, but I mean, I remember back in '79 when Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. They were there for 10 years, Jeff. It ruined them. What do? 12 years after they leave, we go in. We're still there. It's going to ruin us, Jeff. This is going to ruin us, too, in Syria.
Glenn, what's happened to our country? I want to ask you this, and I want to ask everybody this sincere question. How come we just can't declare victory and go home? You know, like you mentioned Afghanistan. Okay, we toppled the Taliban. We smashed Al-Qaeda. We basically destroyed them, for the most part. We destroyed them in Afghanistan. 16 years later, we're still there.
Exactly.
You know, and it's this obsession, Glenn. It's this obsession with nation building. You know, we have to reconstruct Afghanistan. We have to turn it into a democracy. Well, it hasn't been a democracy for thousands of years. Like, what are we, God? Now in Syria, we have to reconstruct Syria. We have to stabilize Syria. Since when did our armed forces get into the nation-building business? Glenn, am I wrong on this?
No, you're absolutely right, Jeff. I mean, this goes back to what you were saying earlier. You know, we can't even put troops on our own border. I think we have to protect our own house first. Instead of the world. We can't protect the world forever.
Glenn, thank you very much for that call. Well, you see, and that's the point, is that you have powers around the world, other countries around the world, they want us to be the global cop because it suits their interests. But as Glenn rightly put it, being the world's policeman is incredibly expensive. It's a burden that in the end breaks any country's back. You don't believe me? Ask the Romans. Ask the British. I mean, I could go country after country. When you become the world's cop, you inevitably become overextended. And eventually you collapse from within. So that's what I get why the world wants it. It's in their self-interest. But how is it in our self-interest? Now, just objectively, okay? Look, it's nothing against these countries. Honestly, many of these countries, I swear, I love them. Really, honest to God, I love them. But why are we on the hook to have to protect them? So I want you to think about this. Here are the countries that I can't list them all because there's so many of them, that we are entitled. We must protect by treaty. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia. Okay, let's go down. Canada, all of Central and Latin America. People don't know this. If somebody attacks Mexico, we have to defend Mexico. You realize that, right? Okay. All right. I keep moving. Israel, Jordan, Turkey, they're a member of NATO, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates. I could go on, country after country. Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia, where my parents are originally from, Macedonia, let me see here, Bosnia, Montenegro, I mean, all of Western Europe. I mean, I could go on and on. You look at these countries. We have to defend over at least 100 countries in the world. Nobody can do that. So it's one tripwire after one tripwire, and we've lost our independence. Because now if you're committed to protect almost every country in the world, what can you do? Someone's going to cross that line sometime. And then what? So is Latvia worth a world war with Russia? I don't think so. I love the Latvians, but I don't think so. Is Syria worth a world war with the Russians? I don't think so. Is Taiwan worth a world war with the Chinese? I don't think so. I love the Taiwanese. I hate the Chinese. I mean, the government. I love the people, but I'm talking about the communist Chinese government. But you got to defend yourselves. I'm sorry, we can't defend everybody. So I'm asking you, it's the same thing. Here, look, international relations, like politics, it's all ultimately local. It's like you running your family. Can you protect everybody on your street? I don't care how big and strong you are. Can you protect everybody on your block? Can you protect everybody in your neighborhood? Can you protect everybody in your community? After a while, I don't care how big, how strong you are, you can't. And it's the same thing with nation building. So, look, I can't control my own Italian in-laws. I swear to you. I'm going to start controlling other people's families? That's what we're doing in these countries. No. We don't like the way you guys have been doing things here in Afghanistan for the last couple thousand years. You know, the honor killings and the warlords and all the crazy sectarian divisions and, you know, the camel's head that you guys kick around with. And you guys think that's fun, that's sport. No, we don't like that, and we're going to change that. Yeah, good luck. Yeah, good luck. Yeah, we're going to stabilize Syria. Right. The arrogance. So, I can't handle my own Italian in-laws. We're going to handle Syria? We're going to create democracy and nation building in Syria? Like, what are you guys on crack? 617-266-6868. Should we bomb Syria? I say hell no. What do you say? All of your calls. Next.
We are studying that situation extremely closely. We are meeting with our military and everybody else. And we'll be making some major decisions over the next 24 to 48 hours.
You know, that's President Trump earlier today when asked whether the United States now will get involved in a major bombing campaign against Syria in response for that alleged chemical weapons attack that took place over the weekend. Why does everything have to be rushed? You know, now. He's got to do it now. 24 hours, 48 hours tops. Why the rush? Why the rush to war? Why not just... look, if it was Assad, I don't believe it was, but let's say, it turns out it was. Okay, let's give it 3-4 days. The dead will still be the dead. The injured will still be the injured. And let's get a team of investigators to come in and actually look at the chemical weapons, see what was used, and see if we can prove which side used it. In other words, do a thorough international investigation. Why just take the rebels' word for it, that it was Assad, when they have an interest in telling the world it was Assad? So what's the rush? Whether we strike tomorrow or Wednesday or next weekend, I mean, in the end, believe me, the message will be delivered. So again, why this rush to war? Because I think the generals are trying to push him into something that they know that deep down he doesn't want to do. Just my opinion. Let's go to Larry in Belmont. Go ahead, Larry.
Jeff, some great callers today, and I have a few points to piggyback.
Yes.
I had to swallow a bitter pill hearing about this and admit that Obama got it right on his tenure. He held off, and the UN proved that it wasn't Assad who did it back in that time.
Yes.
I don't believe in all these coincidences. Trump wants to pull out and put troops on the border, and suddenly this happens. And something else I haven't heard anyone else talk about, I want to key in with you. Which favorite ambassador is taking the helm of the security today? There's your answer on why it's being rushed.
So who's taking?
Ambassador Bolton's supposed to take over.
National security. Larry, I didn't even think he's a big proponent of war in Syria.
Exactly.
Larry, I didn't even think about that.
Right.
And Larry, just one more log on the fire. You've got the Saudi crown prince, and you know how powerful the Saudis are with their oil money. Been on a 1 week long tour. He told Time Magazine, told the president, told the Republicans, told the Democrats, don't get your forces out of Syria. Saudi Arabia wants them there. We need them there. And Shazam, Larry, they delivered a chemical weapons attack right at that moment.
It's crazy how that works. And I don't know why we're listening to the Saudis anyways. Aren't we about to surpass them for oil production?
Yes. In fact, we've already done it, Larry.
So why don't we tell them to take a hike?
That's amen, brother. Thank you for that call, Larry. To me, that's the whole point of becoming energy independent. So we don't have to listen to the Saudis anymore. Let's go to Linda in Medford. You're up next. Go ahead, Linda.
I believe if we keep hanging around the Middle East, sending our men and women and spending our money, the only winner will be China. If we go to the Middle East, we'll be taking our eyes off of China, and I think that is the greatest danger to us. And I'm sure the politicians will support going to the Middle East because their money's commingled with China.
Well, Linda, you make a fascinating point. If I'm the Chinese, if I'm Beijing now, if I'm a Chinese communist, if I'm Xi Jinping, their dictator, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this is incredible. Look at the Americans. There they are, getting involved in one war after another, bankrupting themselves, exhausting themselves, spending themselves into oblivion, being dragged into these huge, long, protracted wars, and we're just building up our military, building up our economy. We're getting stronger and stronger while the Americans are getting weaker and weaker and weaker. If I'm the Chinese, I'm laughing. I'm laughing at us right now.
Yeah, it's really quite ridiculous. I don't think there's anything we can do in the Middle East, whether we go in or we don't go in.
Linda, thank you very much for that call. Look, I completely agree with you. And notice, I'm just being honest. China now has a bigger military than we do. China now is the number one manufacturing power. China now has the second largest economy in the world. How come nobody tells the Chinese, hey, why don't you guys take care of Bashar Assad? Have you noticed that? No one says, hey, guys, you got a lot of money invested in the Middle East. The Chinese are investing everywhere. You know what? You guys got a huge mother Air Force. Whoa, a big mother Navy. You guys could take care of Assad. Why don't you guys go in and, take care of his Air Force and smash his military to pieces? No. It's always Uncle Sucker. It's always us that has to do the fighting, the dying, and the bleeding. Well, I say enough is enough. It's time to put America first. And I want you to think about this. Trump has now ordered 2,000 to 4,000 U.S. National Guard troops on the southern border. 2,000 to 4,000. Those 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria? Take them from Syria. Stop guarding Syria's borders, send them down to our southern border, and have them guard our own borders. Call me crazy. 617-266-6868. Okay. President Trump now says he will make a decision very soon on how the United States responds to the chemical weapons attack in Syria. Evan Heidenrich has been covering this all day. He's in the WRKO newsroom. Take it away, Evan.
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
138 here on the great WRKO. Okay. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Trump says he is now going to make a decision in the next 24 to 48 hours, a major decision on whether to get the United States militarily involved in Syria to hammer the Assad regime in the wake of reports that his government, backed by Putin, were behind the chemical weapons attack in the outskirts of Damascus, the country's capital, in a town called Douma. 617-266-6868. You can also text us, WRKO, so we know it's for us. Your message, whatever it is, 70470. This is from 978. Jeff, isn't Saudi Arabia supposed to fork over a couple $2 billion, like for the reconstruction of Syria? No. That's the kicker. So here you have the Saudi crown prince, okay, Mohammed bin Salman, just to show you how they use us. Okay, this is what they really think of us. So he visits the president. He's visiting Pelosi, Ryan, Schumer, McConnell. He's giving interviews to Time magazine, telling us we have to keep our troops in Syria. So Trump obviously says, well, okay, but somebody's got to pay for this. So are you guys willing to fork over like $2-3 billion? The Saudi crown prince says, no. Hey. We're not wealthy like you. Literally, that was his response. No, hey, you guys are the world's economic superpower. No, we can't afford it. So let me get this straight. It's our troops, our boys, our girls, our blood, and our treasure. We got to pay for the thing as well. They're using us like a bunch of suckers. 617-266-6868. Another 978 makes a brilliant point. Jeff, I thought Putin cleaned up those chemical weapons just like John Kerry did. Do you remember under the Obama regime, after that last chemical weapons attack, the entire mainstream media, oh, look at Jean-Francois. Look at John Kerry. Look at him. Look at Pepe Le Pew. He should win a Nobel Peace Prize. Why? Well, they signed this agreement with the Russians. They've cleaned up all of Assad's chemical weapons. It's all been accounted for, and they shipped it back to Mother Russia. And what brilliant statesmanship and diplomacy on the part of Jean-Francois. So, when they wanted to shill for the Obama regime, then Assad had no chemical weapons. Jean-Francois made sure of that. Now, when they want a war, all of a sudden, looks like maybe Jean-Francois missed a few. He missed a small little batch. A little bit of chlorine. Missed that chlorine gas. Kind of in the corner there, he just didn't see it. They lie with such regular impunity. Honestly, it's disgusting. 617-266-6868. Casper in his truck. Go ahead, Casper, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. I apologize. I'm not going to call you crazy. I'll call you Jeff. My feeling is the end game to this whole thing is everybody's been using everybody. And what should have happened is Bush should have had the guts to make a Kurdistan, and then everything would have been fine. But Russia's using Turkey, Russia's using Iran, Russia's using everybody. So what's going on? Russia's selling arms now to Turkey. So we're going to get ticked off and say we don't need to be in Turkey anymore. So we'll leave, and Russia will fill in the vacuum. And then while nobody's looking and nobody understanding what's going on, Russia will make the Kurdistan. And then all the oil will be under Russia's control because they'll control pathways, because they'll start annexing just like they did in Ukraine, just like they've done everywhere else, and then they'll be the ones in control of the whole thing. They'll do their own nation building. They'll say, look how good we are. We helped people out, and they'll take over the whole region, and we'll be looking around going, wait a minute, all of our guys died. We spent all that money just so that Russia could do what we should have done? And that's what's going to happen. We lose the whole control.
Casper, thank you very much for that call. Look, I'll tell you the truth. I don't think the Russians are going to be able to do it, and I'll tell you why. They got burned in Afghanistan. They couldn't occupy Afghanistan. You think they're going to occupy the Middle East? I mean, remember, Russia is a Orthodox Christian power. The Muslims can't stand them. Now, there's an alliance of convenience, yes, but the Turks are not big fans of the Russians. I mean, they're in an alliance now, but that's short term. The mullahs in Iran, you think they like the Russians? I mean, they'll take their missile technology, yes, but they can't stand the Russians. The Muslim world despises the Russians. So, and remember, Russia has a huge internal Muslim population. So if they try to start annexing territory across the Middle East, you're going to see a massive internal Muslim rebellion within Russia itself. So, no, what the Russians want is very obvious. They want clients for their missiles, for their military. They want big contracts. And they want that naval base in Syria, which is Russia's historic access to the Mediterranean. That's it. I mean, that's what the Russians have always wanted. But notice, the Russians are staying in Syria, but they're not everywhere else. We, on the other hand, are everywhere else. That's the difference. The Russians are being strategic. We're not. And say what you want about the Russians. The Russians see themselves as the defender of Christians in the East. So they are fighting for the Christians in Syria, and they want that naval base. So if I'm Vladimir Putin, or if I'm a Russian in Moscow, I know why my soldiers are in Syria. But if I'm an American, why are my soldiers in Syria? That's what I don't get. I see what the Russians are getting. What are we getting? To me, it's a big fat zero. Just my opinion. Let's go to Tom in New Hampshire. You're up next. Go ahead, Tom.
Good afternoon, Jeff.
Hi, Tom.
I've been listening to a lot of this, and I concur with Jerry from the Cape, and I concur with the guy from Chicago. And what is obvious is every time Trump gets some headway going, a big distraction comes up. It's not coincidental, believe me. The border, it's all coordinated by the elites, the political elite class, and the people with the money behind the scenes. That's what's going on here. And I guess my question is, how do we get an independent voice expeditiously to the president's ear? Because basically the White House is now run by the military, and we got Bolton in there that's pro-military. Don't they have an independent voice in the White House that can have the president's ear so he can make an informed decision without being pushed into this?
Tom, we lost that with Bannon. I was very concerned about that. He was a leaker. There are many problems with Steve Bannon. But Bannon, he was our pipeline. I'm just telling you right now. There's Stephen Miller. I know Miller's going to argue very hard against it. I think Kellyanne Conway is going to argue very hard against it. But there aren't that many voices, representing us in his administration. So what I'm urging everybody to do is you have to call the White House. You have to let the president know that his base does not want war with Syria, or at least most of his base does not want war with Syria. And at a minimum, wait. Because I know those images are disgusting. I know they're horrifying. But don't react with anger. Wait, cool off a little bit. Don't get rushed into this. Let some time develop. Have an investigation. Let a few days go by. Don't get forced into a decision that down the road you're going to regret. That's my strong advice to the president. Thank you for that call, Tom. Tony in Gloucester, you're up next. Go ahead, Tony.
Hey, Jeff, I agree with you 100% about Russia and Syria. I also look at Trump, and I've been following a lot of stories about this. This is my theory, and I think it's going to come to pass. I don't think Trump's going to go after Syria. The big culprit we know is Iran. I think he's going to do a three-country, one-day bombing. Yeah, this is going to sound weird. Saudi Arabia, who's getting missiles are being shot at from Iran, Israel, and the United States. Iran only has 27 fighter jets. Take them down, bomb the nuclear sites. It's going to send a clear message. Russia will complain, China will complain, but no one's going to do anything. And it'll really hit Iran, who's a big one for supporting the Mad Midget. And it really sends a message. You mess with the United States, we're going to take you out. But Iran is the culprit. And I think, and this is President Trump, he doesn't do what all these past presidents have done. And Israel has been letting the Saudis use their air bases. So this is all coming together, I think, and this is what's going to happen. What is your opinion?
So, Tony, you think, I just want to understand what you're saying correctly.
Yeah.
You're basically saying that Trump is looking at Saudi Arabia and Israel as potential allies in this, use their air bases to smash Iran, use this as a pretext to say, look, you guys are the ones really backing Syria. You guys are the biggest backers, even more than Putin. You have this nuclear weapons program. Assad's been using allegedly chemical weapons. You're the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. You know what? I'm not going to go after Assad. I'm going to go after the head snake. You're the head snake, and I'm cutting your head off.
Exactly. And why? Just recently, we had the Saudi prince, Netanyahu at the White House, both talking, and like they say, the Saudi prince says his biggest threat is Iran. Israel's biggest threat is Iran. So, along with the United States, one day I'd say Saudi Arabia and Israel go in first, and then we go in and drop a mother of all bombs.
Interesting. Tony, very interesting theory. Thank you for that call. You can see where Syria is becoming a battlefield for all these proxies. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Israel, they want Assad out. Iran, Russia, the Shiite militias, they want Assad in. So they're basically, it's a place where the great powers are fighting it out in a far-off country and using forces there on the ground as their proxies. My fear is, as an historian, that's exactly what triggered World War I. It was in the Balkans, where all the big powers were using local groups as their proxies, and then eventually, because of the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, suddenly, before you know it, all the great powers were rushing at each other's throat, and you had tens and tens of millions of people dead. That's why my advice to the president is, stay out of Syria. We have nothing to gain and everything to lose. Rich in Cambridge. Go ahead, Rich.
Hey, Jeff, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Rich?
Good, good. That Jerry caller is an excellent caller. He makes some excellent points, and he's got some inside information. The point that I wanted to make that nobody ever seems to talk about is when Obama was in office, and McCain and Lindsey Graham, and the rest of the politicians, they all wanted to get money to the Syrian rebels. They wanted to get arms to the Syrian rebels, and the people spoke out. They made their phone calls to the representatives, and they stopped them from doing it. And then, like a month later or so, we've got Syrian rebels coming over the border of Syria into Iraq. I think there was about 300 or 400 of them going up against 8,000 Iraqi troops who were heavily armed with our tanks, with our jeeps, and so 400 of them against 8,000 Iraqis, and the 8,000 Iraqis fled, leaving those arms behind. And inside the bank were over $400 million in American cash. We don't have $400 million here in our bank. So it's just funny. They weren't able to fund the rebels through the legislative process, but they found a way. And it's just a perfect example of how these politicians, they've got it all backwards. It's supposed to be them representing us, not leading us.
Bingo. Bingo. Thank you for that call, Rich. Look, for years under Obama, the CIA was running a secret covert operation to arm many of these Islamic rebels. And so we were arming and funding groups like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda, like the Al-Nusra Front, because Obama was desperate to topple Assad. And he didn't care where the money went or where the arms went. So we essentially helped create this ISIS monster, this Islamist monster that first was in Syria and then bled over into Iraq. Obama wanted to bomb Assad. If you remember, it was the people. This show led the drive against the war that rose up, and that's why he backed down. And I think, my friends, we're going to have to saddle up one more time. And this time, tell President Trump, we don't care what the generals are telling you. We don't care what the Saudis are telling you. We don't care what the New World Order global elites are telling you. We don't care what the media is telling you. We elected you to put America and Americans first, not to put Syria first. Bring the troops home. Stay out of Syria. Your calls next. John in Needham, you're up next. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, John?
Good, good. This whole thing is absolutely mad. Take yourself back in time when Obama and Hillary first came into power, okay? There was nothing wrong with Assad. Assad had a stable country. So didn't the guy from Libya. So didn't the guy from Egypt. They went in and destroyed the Egypt guy and so forth. And they went after Assad for no reason other than to promote the Muslim Spring. They even protected the Christians. Did you know that? Way back then, everything was stable there. Now, Obama and Hillary are laughing, and we're falling right into it, and they're driving a wedge also between us and Russia with all this Trump and Russia stuff, making Russia right now, if I was them, I'd be awfully upset at America because they saw what we did to Egypt, Libya, and now to Assad, and maybe want to do to North Korea. We are the evil empire in everybody else's mind, thanks to Obama and Hillary.
John, thank you very much for that call. Well, look, just objectively, we overthrew Gaddafi. What replaced him? Radical Islam. We overthrew Hosni Mubarak, or we helped pull the plug in Egypt. What replaced him? The Muslim Brotherhood, Radical Islam. We overthrew Saddam Hussein. What replaced him? Radical Islam. So what do you think is going to happen if we overthrow Bashar Assad? You think what? It's going to be George Washington on the Mediterranean? No. It's going to be some kind of radical Sunni state. Again, radical Islam. And you know who's going to get slaughtered? The Christians, the Yazidis, the Shiite, the Alawites, and the moderate Muslims. So if you want to destroy a country and help empower radical Islam, there's no better ally, I'm just being honest with you, in the last 15 years than the United States of America. That's what our globalist elites have done. And you wonder why so many around the world hate us. My friends, enough is enough. Bring America home. We have enough problems here to focus on. Okay, speaking of problems, Facebook censorship against conservatives grows. The latest victim, you got to hear it to believe it.
The voice of Boston is you. On 680 WRKO Boston, an iHeart radio station. It's 2 o'clock.